Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Sea of Tranquility's Rant series. I'm your host, Pete Pardo. Today, we are going to talk about favorite guitar solos, top guitar solos, favorite guitar solos, whatever. Throughout the history of rock and metal and what have you, and jazz fusion, there's been a ton of terrific guitar solos, some obviously more memorable than others. So what I figured is I try and put together my top 20 favorite guitar solos of all time. Again, these are my favorites. You might think I'm missing some, or you might favor some guitar solos by some of these guys more than others. It's perfectly fine. Like I said, these are just my opinions. Yours may vary, and if so, that's fine. If you feel that strongly about some of your picks, put your top 20 in the comments, all right? I'd love to see them. Again, I gave this some thought, but I wasn't going to rack my brain for weeks trying to come up with a list. They're also not in any order. I'm not going to do my number 1 to number 20 or vice versa. There's obviously some I like more than others, which as I'm going through them, I'll mention. But I'm just going to kind of go randomly here. Again, these are like the 20 best for me of all time. They're going to cross a lot of different genres, as you'll see. So let's just kind of get started. I'm just going to go through the stack here. First one I'm going to talk about here, Mean Street, Eddie Van Halen. Okay. Now, the Fair Warning album's got a lot of really, really great guitar solos. One of my favorite Van Halen albums, actually. And, while the conventional choice for a lot of people would be to pick Eruption, it's not so much a song as it is just a guitar explosion, right? So, as groundbreaking as Eruption actually is, I wanted to pick something within a tune here for Eddie. He has a lot of great guitar solos, right? But something about the Mean Street solo for me, it's just real tasty, throws in a lot of his cool licks, and, and plus the rhythm guitar is great in that tune as well. So, Eddie Van Halen, Mean Streets from the Fair Warning album. Okay, so my next pick was going to be Surfing with the Alien from Joe Satriani, okay? But I can't seem to track down the CD, and you know how I love to show you the actual, the CDs and what have you. I got it somewhere. It's not where I thought it would be, and I just can't find it, but I know I have it. So as a replacement, my number 21 would have been Race with the Devil on Spanish Highway from Al Di Meola from the Elegant Gypsy Suite. Or Elegant Gypsy album, I should say. There we go. Kind of had to throw a jazz fusion guitar solo on here. Obviously the song is instrumental, so there's a ton of lead guitar on it, but that kind of like main solo toward about the midway point for about a minute or so is just breathtaking. So Al would have been my number 21 pick, so Surfing with the Alien would have been on this list if I had it to show you. Okay, this next one is one of my all-time favorite guitar solos, and it's not overly flashy. It's not, it's just so understated and so beautiful and so perfect. I'm talking about Steve Hackett's Firth of Fifth solo from the Genesis Selling England by the Pound album. Hackett doesn't get a lot of credit for some of the understated work he did with Genesis. His solos were never about flash and loudness and technique, but more about kind of utilizing different sounds to create like a perfectly memorable solo. And I just think the Firth of Fifth solo is just remarkable. It just makes total sense. It's got feel. It's got perfect use of tone, and it's just great. And he would like recreate that live. And in fact, I saw him play it just a couple of years ago, and it's just still so amazing. Okay. Speaking of amazing, how can a list of top guitar solos of all time be complete without Terry Kath from Chicago? Of course, I'm talking about 25 or 6 to 4 from Chicago's second album. We've all heard it a million times, but it's one of those guitar solos that I never get sick of hearing. Again, perfect use of tone and phrasing and the use of the wah-wah. Just an incredible solo, incredible song, an incredible player that, died way too soon, and he's sorely missed. Terry Kath. All right, this next one is from a guitar player that is near and dear to me. If you've been following the show or the website, you know what a huge Gary Moore fan I've always been, and what a great loss he's been to the music community. Well, I still remember to this day the first time I heard this song on FM rock radio. Again, Gary Moore was kind of like not a household name at that point. He spent his time in Thin Lizzy, but as far as being a solo performer, Gary Moore was not that well known. But then all of a sudden, I remember sitting there one day and hearing this crazy guitar solo leading into this heavy track. And I was like, what the hell is this? And then the solo in the middle of the song came on. It just blew my mind. And of course, I'm talking about End of the World by Gary Moore off the Corridors of Power album. Just amazing how, in the beginning, he's doing all this shredding and what have you. And then the song just kicks in. It's a heavy tune. And then in the middle, he's doing all these, whammy bar dives and just total shredding stuff. It's just signaled the arrival of Gary Moore as a hard rock and metal player in the early 80s. And, he would go on, of course, to do more of that kind of stuff, but then morph into blues. And, of course, we lost him, about 8, 9, 10 years ago, something like that. He's greatly missed. And End of the World, a favorite of mine. Okay, well, I'm going to go a little bit out of order here from my stack because the one I was just going to talk about, I want to talk about something else first. So, there's been a lot of talk about who kind of created the twin guitar sound, right? Really, the kind of the birth of it started with the Allman Brothers Band, kind of like that southern bluesy jazzy rock, okay? We all know that the Live at the Fillmore album contains a wealth of great guitar work, but for my money, it's in memory of Elizabeth Reed from this album. That is just a milestone. Not only does it have one great guitar solo, it has two. You got an amazing Dickie Betts solo, and then you got a just sizzling Duane Allman guitar solo. So, and it's an instrumental song, and it just kind of builds. It's jazzy. It's got a little bit of blues, got a little bit of rock, but more importantly, each guitar solo is so perfectly orchestrated. Just incredible technique and feel and passion. Just great stuff. So, Dickie and Duane on this one, memory of Elizabeth Reed. Okay, there's a reason why I want to talk about that one first. So I think this next band, who get a lot of credit for really creating that kind of twin guitar harmony thing in more of a rock or hard rock vein, a little bit of prog, as opposed to the Allmans, who did it a little bit differently, but you had two great lead players. Wishbone Ash, okay, their first album. There's a song on here, closes out the album, called Phoenix, which is almost like the second cousin to him in memory of Elizabeth Reed. Instrumental tune that's got some scorching solos, a little more understated bluesy solo from Ted Turner, and then an explosive solo on the Flying V from Andy Powell towards the end. Just incredibly put together guitar solos that perfectly make sense within the confines of that song. Okay, that's what it's all about, right? Guitar solo's got to be memorable. You got to be humming that guitar solo and thinking of that guitar solo after you've heard it. So, Phoenix. All right, another band, again, multiple guitar players. This is a legendary solo in a legendary song. I wasn't going to pick this, okay, just because it's just so cliche to pick this song. I know you know what I'm talking about. Freebird from Lynyrd Skynyrd's first album. That Albert Collins solo is just, it's so memorable. It's one of the most memorable guitar solos of all time. And whether you ever need to hear Freebird again, you can't deny what a great solo that is to close out that song. It's just unbelievable. I still love hearing it. Okay, maybe Freebird the song, yeah, okay, but if you could just play that guitar solo for me, that's all I need to hear. Freebird, Skynyrd and Albert Collins. Alan Collins, sorry. I had to include this guy because I love him to death, and I think, he did some groundbreaking work in the Dregs, but more importantly, he had some kick-ass stuff in the Steve Morse band. I'm talking about Steve Morse, of course. Cruise Missile from the introduction. This is his first official solo album, and he just burst into Cruise Missile to lead off the album, and it's just, everything about Steve Morse is there, the kind of like the bluesy country chicken picking stuff, crazy, speedy rock lines, and it's just a beautifully constructed instrumental song, but again with a scorching solo right in the middle that's just instantly memorable, instantly tasty with chops of doom. I remember when I first heard this, I was actually in college, I think probably about 85, maybe 86, first time I heard this album. And I was just like, holy crap. It actually came out a few years earlier in 84. So I didn't hear it till a couple years after it was released. But man, I was just completely blown away by Cruise Missile. And I listen to it today and I still get chills. Okay? That's what it's all about, right? Okay. Alex Lifeson from Rush. Lot of great solos to choose from, right? There's a bunch that are really, really memorable. I almost chose Spirit of Radio. I almost chose Free Will. Okay. I almost chose Limelight, which Limelight is so memorable. But I said, man, there's a song that I just can't ignore, even though it's an instrumental tune and there's guitar solos galore in it. But, the guitar solo, the main guitar solo in the song is just mind-boggling. Of course, La Villa Strangiato, and you got to pick it from the All the World's a Stage, from the Exit Stage Left album. The reason why I mentioned All the World's a Stage, because I almost picked By Tor and the Snow Dog from that one. But anyway, an incredible guitar player with lots of memorable solos. He's a perfect example of a guy who always created solos that just perfectly fit those songs. He never just went on and on and on and on. It's really tasty stuff. So again, when it comes to Lifeson, so many to choose from. I apologize if I'm not picking your favorite. I had so many that I wanted to include here, but I had to lay it down to just one. And I don't know, something about La Villa Strangiato on this album is just amazing. Okay. Stranglehold. Right? It's got to be on this list. Ted Nugent. It's just such a amazing song. That's got this wonderful guitar solo that's actually pretty damn jazzy for Nugent. It's a long one, and it just goes really smooth. The notes and the melodies and him dropping back and forth between jazz, blues, and rock, really, really cool. Whether you like the Double Live Gonzo live version or the studio version, really doesn't matter. They're both fantastic. I just figured let's pick the studio one here because I always tend to go for the live ones first, as I'm going to go with this next one, which is A Little Bit of Sympathy by Robin Trower from the Robin Trower live album. All right, it's that one right there. Man, this is one of my favorite albums of all time. Just a remarkable guitar performance from Trower, my first guitar hero ever. And there's a couple of tunes on this album where the solos were incredible. Two Rolling Stone is great. Rock Me Baby is great. I Can't Wait Much Longer is actually also has a great guitar solo, but there's something about A Little Bit of Sympathy. It's the last tune on the album. He would play that to close a lot of his shows. And man, it's just bits of funk and psychedelia and blues, and it's just awesome. And of course, his use of the wah-wah pedal is so incredible. I just love this solo to death. Robin Trower, live, A Little Bit of Sympathy. All right, potentially one of the best extended guitar solos of all time, in my opinion. Rock Bottom, Michael Schenker and UFO from the Strangers in the Night album. What more can you say? It's just a perfect solo. Schenker, one of the best hard rock soloists of all time, in my opinion, and he's on the money throughout this entire live album, but man, the Rock Bottom solo on here is just so dramatic, so sizzling. His speedy pentatonic runs and just blistering, perfectly constructed tones and notes, and it's just an incredible performance. One of the best hard rock guitar solos of all time, in my opinion. All right, got to include Jimmy Page on this list, right? Of course. So thought long and hard about this one. A lot of good Page performances, obviously. The most obvious pick would have been Stairway to Heaven, and I actually had that on my list and I scratched it out. As great as the Stairway to Heaven solo is, I've always liked one a little bit better, and that's the Since I've Been Loving You solo from The Song Remains the Same. Better than the studio version, I think. I think his guitar solo here on Since I've Been Loving You is one of his best solos ever. Again, it's just pure emotional blues. Just so good. So good. I could just listen to it over and over and over again. And of course, it's a great song as it is, right? Kind of like a real passionate, emotional, bluesy rock song. And then Page just rips into this mercurial solo. It's awesome stuff. All right. Well, Cliffs of Dover got to be on this list. Eric Johnson from the Avia Musicom album. I remember when this album came out, most of us were kind of like, whoa, listen to that. He explodes in this furious, just nimble explosion right off the bat in the beginning of the song, and then the tune is just very memorable and quirky and great melodies, and then he rips a great solo in the middle of it too. Just a great guitar performance, an amazing solo. It's a shame that that was probably what for most people the best thing he ever did. He's had a lot of really solid albums since then, but man, he just blew it out of the park on this one. Just great stuff. Another instrumental track that just is undeniable. Of course, I'm talking about In the Name of God. For the Love of God, sorry. Think of the Dream Theater song. For the Love of God, Steve Vai from the Passion and Warfare album. Again, a song that's mostly guitar solos, but just the main solo is just, Vai, for my money, is probably one of the most incredible players on the planet. The guy can do anything and everything, and, what can you say? It's just this whole album is just an incredible performance, but that is just, if you've ever seen that and perform that live, it's just mind-blowing. So, what else we got here? Yeah, For the Love of God, man. Great stuff. Yeah, Far Beyond the Sun, Yngwie Malmsteen. Again, another instrumental tune, but with, and again, it's mostly all about the lead guitar in that song, but that main solo is just explosive. At the time, we never really heard shit like that before. Just amazing stuff. The whole neoclassical shred thing, but just perfectly executed. You could have picked Black Star or whatever, but for me, Far Beyond the Sun is just my favorite tune on there. It's just always been one of my favorite guitar solos since the day I heard it. No top guitar solo show or list would be complete without Comfortably Numb by David Gilmour from the Wall album. Again, you've heard me say this a million times. I'm actually not a huge fan of the Wall album. I know. Don't shoot me. I just find this album a little long and meandering and not enough really great songs, but there are obviously a handful of great songs, no doubt. Comfortably Numb, that solo is just, it just chills up and down the spine every time you hear it. It's just perfect, Gilmour's laid-back style. Just, man, the notes just come pouring right out of his soul. It's just this dramatic, it's chilling, it's just a brilliant guitar solo. Probably a top 5 guitar solo of all time, right? All right, these next two are definitely in my top 3 of all time. Ironically, I saved them for last. I didn't actually mean to do that. I'm going to do one before the other because I think the other one is even better. But this one is just amazing for me. As most of you know, I'm a huge Deep Purple and Ritchie Blackmore fan. Since I was like a wee kid of maybe, 14 years old, 15, maybe 13, something like that. I don't know. The Child in Time solo by Blackmore from the In Rock album is just absolutely mind-boggling. One of the best kind of like extended, along with like Rock Bottom, one of the best extended guitar solos of all time. Just Blackmore just pulling it all out. Just incredible speed and dexterity using, heavy rock and blues and jazz, just like classical, incredible stuff. And, the Made in Japan version is even longer, just as good, but different. They both sound completely different. So I wasn't sure which one to pick, this one is like perfectly constructed. The Made in Japan one's got all sorts of crazy shit going on, but either way you look at it, Child in Time, that tune is just masterful. You've got this incredible Blackmore guitar solo. You've got some incredible Hammond organ solos from John Lord, and of course Ian Gillan screams. Just an amazing song. Yeah. So this next one for me might be one of the best guitar solos of all time. It's just, every time I listen to it, I just am speechless at how good it is, and I've heard it a million times. It's just a player at the top of his powers, and sadly he wasn't going to be around much longer after he played this, which is the travesty of it all. I'm talking about Jimi Hendrix, Machine Gun from the Band of Gypsys album. On this solo, and it lasts for what, a minute and a half, something like that. Jimmy is just going berserk with the whammy bar and using feedback and fuzz and univibe and wah wah, just kind of incorporating everything that was the Jimi Hendrix sound. It's just sheer perfection. And the funny thing is, if you go in, this was recorded obviously at the Fillmore on New Year's Eve 1969. If you go and you listen to like all the recordings from that weekend, he played a bunch of shows that weekend that were all recorded, and they've released them. You can hear the whole shebang. If you go and listen to the other versions of Machine Gun from that weekend, they're good, but man, something about this particular one. Okay, I believe this one on this album was the one recorded on New Year's Eve. Okay, just right before midnight, or maybe just right after midnight. There's something about this one. He doesn't quite reach the heights on the other ones as he does on this one, which is on this album. It's just so memorable. And I had a conversation with my wife recently. She was asking me about, why I like Hendrix so much, and she's not really into a lot of this stuff. And I said, I want you to listen to something. And I put on Machine Gun, and I explained to her what the lyrics were about the song and what Jimmy was trying to go for. Because, to the uninitiated, the Machine Gun guitar solo is a lot of noise, a lot of chaos going on. And I said, picture yourself sitting in the jungles of Vietnam with machine guns and bombs and mortars firing all over the place, and all that chaos and all that terror. And she listened to the guitar solo and she said, I get it now. I can totally picture that. Well done. I'm like, exactly. That's what makes it a classic guitar solo, because it creates a mood, it creates an image, and that's so, so important. So those are my top 20 guitar solos of all time. As I was going through this, I just realized that I omitted anything from Uli John Roth. Okay, and I totally should have included something from the old Scorpion days when he was in the band. So I apologize to Uli and all the Uli fans, because I love him to death, and I definitely should have put something by him in here. But again, that's what happens when you do stuff like this. It's like there's always going to be, but what about? But what about? But what about? So I could have done a top 25, a top 50. This can go on and on forever. So I apologize if you didn't see your favorites on here. I'm sure I'm going to think of some stuff that I probably could have included. I didn't get Ace Frehley on here. I didn't get Johnny Winter on here. I didn't get Stevie Ray Vaughan on here. A lot of great players that I love. Tony Iommi's not on here. So I apologize if you didn't see what you really liked on here. No George Lynch on here. There's some guys that probably are very deserving, and you can't fit them all, right? Can't fit them all. So will I maybe do a part 2 of this and do the next batch? Maybe. We'll see. If you really want it, I'll do it. But like I said, if you want to put your top 10 or top 20 in the comments, go right ahead. That'd be cool to see what everybody else thinks. And, until next time, visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're here quite often these days on the mighty YouTube. We got lots of great stuff coming up. We've actually got a part 3 of our Black Sabbath show. Chris Allo and I are going to get together again, and we're going to tell you our 5 favorite Black Sabbath albums and why, and we got all sorts of memorabilia and cool Sabbath shit we're going to show you. So that's coming up real soon, as well as all sorts of, I got some other artist retrospective history of shows coming up on Yes, and we're going to do a Priest one, and, Michael Schenker group, all sorts of fun stuff. So till then, take care. See you.